Welcome back to the second Spar Scene MMA show. I'm joined here with my good friends Brad and Ducky, and today we're going over last night's UFC 292. And boy, did we have a good night of fights last night. But to finish it off, Sean O'Malley defeating Aljamain Sterling for the 135 belt. Let's get into it.
Wow. What a finish to last night's fights. Got to be honest, as analysts, I believe all three of us need to eat a little bit of crow after last week. We probably spent 40 to 45 minutes breaking down a plethora of reasons why Aljamain Sterling had no chance of losing this fight, and then he lost the fight. I'll be honest, I was getting a little bit exhausted near the end of the fights. I think I had a little bit of an adrenaline letdown. The co-main event was dragging a little bit. No fault to any fighter, but starting to lose consciousness a little bit. And then I woke up to the sound of the commentators celebrating Aljamain's knockout. To be honest with you, I feel like the UFC just made and cashed 1 million checks. I'm sure they're very happy about this result. I had no expectation of this happening. I didn't think it would. I didn't think it would be this easy. After the fight, I did watch a little bit of the press conference with Sean O'Malley. He revealed that 5 to 6 weeks, he was unable to train any grappling. So no live rounds. It was no live MMA sparring. It was only his hands. In a weird way, I feel like that handicap almost ended up being his biggest advantage. He treated getting taken down and Aljamain's hands getting clasped as just a death sentence. He was not willing to let it happen. He did a beautiful thing with his kicks. He would circle away from whatever side he was kicking to avoid kicks being caught in a Muay Thai fashion. So honestly, it was very impressive. I think I said last week that Sean had to have the best night of his entire career in order to get this done. Surprisingly enough, he did. I feel a little bad for Aljo in retrospect because I feel like it wasn't the best showing for him. I don't think we saw everything that he can do. Also think he got a little hypnotized by Sean and he got pulled into his game. I didn't expect it to be so easy. Listen, hats off to Sugar. It was a beautiful performance. I think my biggest question at this point is what's next for Sean O'Malley?
That's the big question. He did call out Chito Vera for the second fight between those two. I think it's a smart call out. I think it's a fight that he can, I don't want to say easily win, but I think he's definitely highly favored in that fight. If I were an odds maker, I would say probably O'Malley will probably open around minus 400. I think it'll be a pretty big favorite in that fight. And I'd probably put in a parlay, to be honest with you. I think it's a pretty easy fight for him. He's not bringing up Merab Dvalishvili, though. Merab Dvalishvili. So that's a fight he's scared of. I'm pretty sure. You can't blame him because Merab's just a aggressive guy who's just going to go for the takedowns over and over and over. And of course, Aljo is a good wrestler, but Merab's just, I think, much more aggressive with his wrestling. And I think he'll definitely not be afraid to go for the takedown to try to get something on O'Malley. Get him to the ground, do ground and pound. And I think O'Malley's going to stay away from Merab as much as he can.
Yeah, and let me just say I was totally wrong about Sean O'Malley not having knockout power. I didn't say officially he didn't have knockout power, but I did question if he had knockout power. I think, Alex, you might have agreed with me. Not sure. I kind of want to forget that now. But you're talking about him circling in the ring. I did like the feints. Those definitely kept Aljo away from the takedowns. But as you guys were just talking about Merab, where does Sean go from here with those feints? How does he defend the takedowns any more than he did? And those are a lot of questions I want to see asked, but all props to Sean. Before we move on, I would say I'm sorry, Sean. You do have the knockout power. I did see people say early stoppage. I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, with Aljo being the champ, you kind of want to see him get a little more of a chance, but I'm not sure. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Yeah, I was when the referee stopped it, I was like, I think that was a bad stoppage. But looking back on it, it's debatable. You hate to see it because it's such a big fight with such big, intention. Like that was Aljo's icing on the cake, right? So that was his final match in that division, going to move up, fight Volkanovski. So it was a lot at stake for both of these guys. And I think it should have been like a little bit longer, but at the end of the day, you know, O'Malley had his moment and he capitalized.
In a fight like this, where there's title implications, you want to see blood. We see you.
Yeah.
You want to see suffering. One thing that I'm positing, and I'll say it here first, it almost happened last night, and I believe it will happen again. I actually like Chito Vera a lot. I enjoy him. I followed him through his whole career. I was just to root for him. He would be on the wrong end of a lot of decisions for a while because he has a tendency to throw away the first couple of rounds. He does it over and over again. Got him into massive trouble with Corey Sandhagen. Lost him that fight. It was a huge stinker. Kind of put a kibosh on his momentum when that fight happened. I think it was an Apex fight night or something like that. I feel like he's got to be very careful with that against Sean. If he comes in there and keeps giving away rounds like that, and I know he's scanning, he's taking his reads, but you got to do some attritive damage, and you got to do something that's showing the judges that you're winning the fight. And I don't feel like he's a round winner, but he's a fight winner by damage. I'm not sure that's the best strategy to deal with Sean, but we shall see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just not sure what the strategy is for Sean after this. You know, with one of the best wrestlers in the division, you know, how do you beat him? And Merab's definitely foaming at the mouth of getting ready for this fight. So we're gonna see it.
He's still got his jacket as well. So
Yeah.
Michael Jackson, the red jacket. So yeah, there's some beef between these guys, and you know, of course, Merab and Alger are at the same camp, Sarah Longo. So there's some beef there, which makes the fight more exciting. You know, whenever it does happen.
By the way, gentlemen, speaking of the Sarah Longo camp, we're going to return to them at the very end of the podcast. We're going to have a little discussion of Chris Weidman. Before we do that, though, we know Brad has been chomping at the freaking bit to get out of this. Ian Garry versus Neil Magny. Wow. What a fight. What are your thoughts about Ian Garry, the trash talk, the overall weekend? How do you feel, Brad?
Man, well, you know my opinion from last week. I'm not a big fan of the guy. And after this weekend, I'm even less of a fan of the guy. I think his press conference was cringy, as a lot of people would agree with. I think the fight was impressive, you know, with the leg kicks, but I don't know. I mean, it's a tough fight. Neil Magny's dangerous, but he hasn't done much in the past few years. He has the most wins in the division over GSP and everyone else, but he's higher in age, man. He's almost done with the sport. And Ian Garry, you know, I didn't finish him, but he could have finished him. He should have finished him. But you know, he wants to call out Wonder Boy, another 40-something-year-old guy. It's like shades of Jake Paul a little bit, you know, going after these guys who are already beat up and on their way out of this UFC. So what are your thoughts on the call out of Wonder Boy?
Call out a Wonder Boy? To be honest, I feel like it fits in a lot with UFC's matchmaking style, which I've had a little bit of complaints before. You've heard my rant on this when we were at the fights in Charlotte, Simon. They have a habit of matching up their surging stars with aging legends. And they use the legends to build the young guys. What's beautiful about that is they get visibility, they get seen. You beat this guy. Wow, he's the next big thing. The only thing that it does mess with perception-wise, though, is I think we see these guys. They don't struggle at all on the way up to the title. They do wonderful. They're smashing. Ian Garry's smashing people. He's knocking them out, finish him. He's just walking through people. He walked through Neil last night. He should have finished him, in my opinion. I don't know how good Neil's chin is, but one of my stories is they build people off of these legends, and then when they finally meet real opposition, now you get a feel for what the real story is, i.e. Conor. When he finally met Khabib, even when he dealt with Chad Mendes, and this is like 6 days notice, Chad Mendes took him down, controlled him for, was it 2 rounds, maybe a round and a half before he got exhausted trying. So I feel like there's a little bit of that going on with Ian Garry. I think we're going to see as he struggles when he gets to the Shavkat Rachmanovs, when he gets to Khamzat Chimaev, that's where we're going to see, all right, can he mix it up in that in-between space? People who can grapple, people who can strike. Oddly enough, I'd be interested to see maybe Ian Garry get tested against Gilbert Burns. Dorino, let's see how that.
They train at Kill Cliff together though,
Clip. UFC.
Conflict of interest.
so they'll be staying away. But yeah, I don't know. I think, have you heard Dana White's post-fight interview? He did say they talked with Wonderboy about this fight already, and he turned it down. So, not even a few hours after the match, after the call out, Wonderboy gets the call, he turns it down. It's I don't know if Dana's just throwing stuff out there because he's not a fan, because Wonderboy did go public but not being paid when Bajeda did make weight, even though he turned down another fight for a replacement that weekend as well. So I think Dana's not a fan of Wonderboy right now, and maybe he's just throwing stuff out there to kind of rag him a little bit. But that's true. I mean, I don't know, Wonderboy turning down, maybe he's just a young prospect, so doesn't want to have a guy capitalize off of his name. But I don't know. I think, Wonderboy should be taking these fights, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I think he's being very picky. He was before this too. I think with him not getting paid, he's even more pickier. And also, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson's a really nice guy. I don't know if he wants to, after the way Ian and Garry acted that week, does he want to deal with someone like that? I think that's kind of like the big question. But I think we have to hear it from Stephen Wonderboy himself, like what his reasoning is behind that.
Actually, the only moment that came across measured and respectful, oddly enough, in regards to this, was in the post-fight press conference. Ian Garry, it's weird, when he got on the topic of Wonderboy, he got a little more respectful. They even asked him, "It's like, what are you going to use as trash talk? Like, what would you use as your material?" And that kind of lead up. And he said, "I'm not so sure I would." I don't believe that one bit from him. I think he'll say anything. I think he's figured that out. But it would be interesting to see if he would treat that with respect. Does this remind anyone of Darren Till's build-up?
A little bit.
Right? He fought him in England, beat him at home. Didn't win, by the way. He lost by decision, but of course was gifted the decision. We all saw how that kind of ended up. Darren was very brash. He was saying, "I'm going to take over every single weight division. I'm going to do all this stuff," but it was too soon, and he got whooped by Tyrant. It's an incredible performance that got put on. That was the last great Tyron Woodley performance. If you haven't seen it, it's beautiful. But yeah, Ian Garry is an interesting cat. I think I said this to Brad separately, is that great fighter, maybe a little bit of an irrational human being right now, but I remember being that age and being full of piss and vinegar. Maybe that's part of it. Not sure.
And I went to the card in Jacksonville. I believe it was 2020. I think it was last April. And being in the hotel lobby, all the fighters kind of walked through, just to go in and out. There was one guy who was in the lobby almost every time I was down there. Take a guess who that fighter was. Ian Garry. Him and his girlfriend, who's like twice his age. And yeah, dude, he was just always in the lobby, just wanting that fan attention. And she was right there beside him, taking it in. And so you can kind of see shades of like, okay, this guy, he wants to be in the spotlight. He wants everyone to know who he is, and he wants to be out there. And that's what it's gone to. The dude's grown tremendously. He's not a fan favorite, but he's a big time name in the sport now. Just like 3 fights in to his UFC career, which is huge. So I'm curious to see how they build his name up and how they choose his opponents, because he does have a lot of potential. But we'll see if he comes and matches up with the wrong guy.
Yeah, and kind of circling back to Sean O'Malley, like kind of how this relates to this, but we're seeing a lot of these strikers being successful. So this kind of works in Ian Garry's favor. We have Leon Edwards as champ, Izzy as champ, now Sean O'Malley, striking-based champs. So I think the UFC is really going to invest in these guys. But when we look at Sean O'Malley, they want him to fight Aljo, 3 months after. Was that rushed? I mean, did that affect the fight? I don't think so, but it was really quick. So they're going to invest in guys like this. So I don't know what we're going to see about that, but I think that's interesting how we're starting to see it creeping in. These striking based people or fighters are starting to kind of make a comeback.
Yeah, one question. I don't think you brought this up yet. Alex, what are your thoughts on the words he was using in his this press conference, using the same lines as McGregor, trying to just mimic his style, like word for word. What's your opinion on that?
That's a bridge too far. That's, I have much more of a tolerance for the antics, I think, than you do, actually, Brad. But
Yeah.
even so, I was a little turned off by that piece. I'm fine if you want to sort of steal the caricature, but let's not turn it into a caricature. And that's a little bit almost like when you go to the county fair and there's a guy who's drawing caricatures of you, and then he draws your wife or whatever. You're like, oh my God, that's not what it look like. So I feel like he's doing a poor imitation of it. And if you're going to, that's okay, but at least come up with new material. Let's not hear the same stuff, because at this point, even Conor, that last press conference, oh man, it's getting brutal. It's cringe at this point. It's getting to the point where it's just, I can't rock with it. I'm still excited for him as a fighter. I don't put a lot of stock into the press conference stuff and the trash talk stuff, because I know when all is said and done, let's look even at the main event. You look at the interaction between Sean and Aljo after the fight. That's beautiful. I love seeing guys be respectful to each other. At the end of the day, it's fight, it's business. What actually was a big turnout for me was maybe the pointing of the finger over and over again to Neil. I mean, you're already smashing this poor guy. You need to beating on his legs. That's enough. I don't need that last little bit. It reminded me a little bit of when Michael Bisping fought Jorge Rivera many, many moons ago, and he clearly had some sort of personal beef with him, and he knocked him out against the cage and went and spit on the corner. And I remember people were really shocked by that. Listen, they're fighters. You got to be used to seeing this kind of stuff, but it's still a little jarring, right?
Yeah, but a lot of fighters, there's the martial arts, I don't know what you want to call it. Yeah. So I think he kind of went against that in a lot of people's mind, probably me included. Just the fact that the fight was over and he still just throws a finger at him, and just talking to him. But that's his style, man. That's who he is. That's what he does. We'll see if, he changes as he gets older and matures. It's just his identity, and he's going to stick to it.
Yeah. Before we move on, I was going to ask this before, but I forgot. You were talking about the post-fight interview with Aljo. When they asked him about moving up, he was kind of questioning it. He mentioned kind of saying, I got knocked out. I don't know what's going to happen against Volk. Before we move on, what's your guys' thoughts on that?
I feel like Sugar Sean is so unique. His levers, he's got dogs. He's got dogs and he can swat. And when he hits people, it's a special kind of angle. There's almost a whip to it. He's long. He's lean. He's long. Reminds me a little bit of the kicks from, my goodness, Yair Rodriguez. Reminds me a little bit of that. It's got this dangerous whip to it. Because of that, I think he was able to put his lights out. Man, I think it's fair for him to doubt himself, because I do feel like his frame and his athleticism is a huge part of his success at the weight class at Bantamweight. But I'm a huge fan of fighters risking big and going big. And to me, I would love to see him move up to 145. He's more hydrated. His wrestling pace is going to be completely on another level. He's not even going to have to worry about getting tired at that weight class. As fighters get older, we saw it with RDA. He's moved up to 170s. He has effective? No. But the weight cuts at this point in his life at 155 would kill him. And I think I see the vascularity on Aljo when he's cutting. Wow. It's, when he hits that scale, he's looking real deathly, like Charles Oliveira deathly, right? So I just love to see those guys get a little bit of weight and feel a little bit more refreshed in there. What do you think, Brett? Does he have a chance at 145?
So do you think, was it Sean's power in this fight, or was it Aljo cutting so much weight that caused him to just, drop so, not easily, but after one shot, he was out. They're close to being out with a few shots to finish it up.
I think it was a mix of both. We've seen in the past, Sean definitely has that power, but I also saw in other fights, he was piecing them up. I think it's a mix of both. I'm not sure, Alex, what do you think?
It does make one wonder, because we saw Chris Moutinho walk through those shots for 3 rounds. He's, Return of the Living Dead over there. And when you think about Aljo, I mean, he's been cracked before, and he's got a chin on him. I mean, the only other person to finish him was Mirage. He did well with Pedro Munoz. He kind of schooled Pedro Munoz on the feet at one point in a 3-round decision. He got clipped numerous times. He was doing fine. It's really hard to say. Sometimes I feel like the moment got the better of him. Robin Black is a MMA commentator from Canada. He's a cool cat. You see him on some Bellator stuff here and there. I remember he said something about when Conor fought Eddie Alvarez, I think UFC 205 or something like that, or somewhere around there, when he won the lightweight title and became a 2-division world champion. Eddie Alvarez fell into the trap of sitting there and watching Conor work. And it was like a rhythmic, he pointed this out, Robin Black did, it was like a rhythmic manipulation. He was pulling Eddie side to side, pulling him in when he wanted it. And I felt a little bit of that was going on here. You know, they even pointed out the broadcast team. They were showing side by side the Aldo knockout, Conor side by side with this. I think he just had that angle just right. And I wonder, at that moment when Aljo shot, you could sense the frustration. He was almost like, you know what? It's been a whole round. I couldn't get my hands around this guy. I'm shooting. And at that moment, he got cracked with that right hand. I didn't expect it. I mean, I was shocked. I was shocked. And I think he was too.
He was getting discouraged by those feints too. He just like didn't know when to shoot. Like you said, he just kind of did it and wasn't really their best timing. But
it was raw dog.
Yeah. So let's touch on Chris Weidman. He made his return this weekend. Didn't go as planned. Do you think this is it for him? Do you think he has one or two more? What's your thoughts?
I think he's got one or two more, but I don't know if I want to see him. So I think he's a good guy, and I think he's a respectful martial artist, and I honestly don't need to see him take more punishment. What I saw was almost like in the MMA meta. It was a little bit reminiscent of the Rockhold fight against Bohachinia. I felt a little bit like, you know, he was fighting these demons. He was fighting himself. What really sucks watching that is that there were moments where Chris Weidman bit down on his mouthpiece and he rushed him to the fence and hit him with a left hand. He freaking dropped him, twice? You could see the power is the last thing to go with these guys. It always is. The speed and the agility and the reflexes go, but the power is still there. He still had it, but mentally, I think there's so much protective. They used to call it kinesiophobia in physical therapy. When somebody injures themselves really bad, they have a fear of a movement. He was afraid of getting kicked, of getting in a real good scramble. He was shooting raw from far away. I just saw a lot of tentative reactions from him that I know he's better than. I know he's a fantastic fighter. I don't need to see these guys suffer like this, but I do feel proud that he came out there, made the comeback, fought with the leg, made it all 3 rounds. If anything, it's a moral victory. If Dana cuts it off here, which he so rarely does, if he says, hey, it's time to retire, I have no opposition to that. My question for you, gentlemen, is if it's not over, what are fun fights? Are there fun fights with other comparable legend-type guys that we could feed to Chris Weidman where at least it's a little bit more competitive and he can make a better showing and walk out maybe on a win?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think he was very tentative, with his leg. But there's a moment in the second round where he flipped the switch. And I think it was from a head kick Tavares threw. And he blocked the head kick and then just pointed at him, started talking to him. And you could see a shift in his mindset. He started doing a southpaw orthodox, started switching up more because he had to, or the fight was going to be over. It was barely walking on his left leg. And so I think he did switch, mid-fight. I don't know if that's going to carry on to his next fights, if he does have next fights. But I think he was a little timid at first, but I think he kind of broke through that mental barrier and started having some success. He just couldn't, he had no base. So his punches didn't have much power. But he did well with, I think, the situation that he was in, with being on one leg. I think he did well with what he had. But what's next? I don't know. It's tough to say because I think he's overcome so much to get back to where he is now. It's like if he does one fight, is it for nothing, or does he think he has more in the tank? I don't know. Maybe he'll make a statement sometime soon and kind of give the fans an idea.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing him fight again. I think with him being at middleweight, he's at that threshold where a lot of the guys can continue longer with age. We see a lot of guys in light heavyweight, still competing at an older age. So I think he has that to his advantage a little bit. I was kind of looking at the middleweight rankings, and it's not super deep, so they could find some guys to pick from. I just don't know.
The top 15?
Well, like after that,
I mean,
not in the top 15.
Brad Suarez is like, he wasn't in the top 15.
Yeah,
He's wording outside the perimeter.
I mean, you're talking like,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know who would be out there for him.
It was a crazy fight to me, and I'd be okay with this one. I think he did a fight at 205 because it wasn't going so good at 185 because his cuts are just utterly ridiculous. There's a jiu-jitsu phenom called Rodolfo Vieira. This guy's interesting. He fought at 185, I believe, a couple of times at 205. He's going through some struggles, just trying to figure out how to blend the striking and the grappling together. And for some reason, his build, he's very muscle bound. He has a tendency to get a little bit tired, get a little gassed, but incredible grappling. Obviously, his base is outrageous. He's had a little bit of a skid, and he's outside the rankings, but he's a little bit of an older fighter, and I feel like his speed is a little bit more comparable, and his style is very heavy, like Chris. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing a fun fight like that. Maybe two guys that are pretty grappling heavy. Maybe we're going to see a little less brain damage. My main thing that I don't want to see anymore, guys, that Tony Ferguson feel. I don't like seeing idolized or watched all these years take brutal beatings. I want you to be able to know where your keys are.
Swear or not.
He conquered. He came back. That's all we can ask for.
Yeah. So we did have two Ultimate Fighter finales on Saturday. Kurt Hollabaugh won the lightweight division, and then Brad Katona, the bantamweight. That Brad Katona fight, did you watch that? That was a brawl. It's like shades of the Forrest Griffin, Stephen Bonner.
Incredible fight.
Yeah, that was awesome. I was a little disappointed. Yeah.
I had Hollabaugh in my picks, so he was the only one that was plus money out of all three of us, and then we hit the Hollabaugh picks. So
Pedro let me down. He crushed my soul.
Oh yeah.
He just touches. He didn't have any power. I mean, he didn't do any grappling. I thought he would go for a takedown this fight. He just stood and traded with Cheeto, which isn't the best idea considering Pedro has just there's no power in his hands. His kicks, he just touches and touches, and yeah. That went how I kind of expected it to go. I think Cheeto, it took him a while to get the wheels rolling, but once it did, that third round, he was hot.
He won on damage to me rather than volume.
Mm-hmm.
It was very impactful when he did land.
Didn't one judge give Cheeto all rounds? Was that the fight?
Yeah, I think
30-27
did, maybe.
Yeah, I was a little confused by that. I mean, Cheeto definitely won in my eyes, but I thought Pedro won that. But
I think there are some judges that get the script ahead of time about where the story's supposed to go, and then others that don't.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that's what I thought with Brad Katona, man. I think he's worthy to be in the UFC, but I don't know if you guys watched Tough, but his final fight before this one, I thought he lost it, man. But
yeah, I'm with you on that one. That was a little questionable.
Who knows, man?
Of course, we have to give our props to Zhang Wei Li. That was a dominant performance. She looked very impressive. Did some work in Bang Tao in Thailand the past few months, which is a great facility. A lot of fighters are going there. I think Yuri's there now training. Volkanovski and I think Adesanya might train a little bit there. I know Volkanovski has a lot of coaches like Frank Hickman that train out there. So it's a newer gym, but a lot of fighters are going there to do some of their work in camp.
What were you guys' take on her new sort of babyface turn? I love that. She's almost like a huge star. Like people have turned toward her. I love that. She got a hell of a pop in Boston. It's incredible.
Yeah. Speaking the English, I thought that was awesome. I saw she was also FaceTiming Tom Brady with Dana White.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. I thought that was a good fight. That's when I was getting a little tired though. So those 5 rounds were kind of long for me. I enjoyed the fight, but this felt like a really long night. But before we end things off, is any fighters from last night you want to tip your cap to?
Whaley, I think she was most impressive to me. I love what Sean did, but she controlled every minute of the entire fight for 25 minutes. She was like GSP to me last night. The grappling was on point. The striking was on point. At one point, I look at the strike count, and it was like 150 something to 20. It was just like, it's not that she pitched a shutout, but she had so much control. And I never was worried. I was never worried about her getting clipped. It was a beautiful performance. Can't wait to see where she goes from here.
Mm-hmm. I think Gregory Rodriguez, he's been dominant. I've loved watching him fight. He's super aggressive. He's powerful. He stands and he bangs. And, Saturday he took the guy down, landed like 2 elbows. Arguably back of the head. But regardless, dude, he's just a monster. I think if he can put together some wins, he can do some damage in the top 15 for sure. I think he's like early 30s, so he's got some time left. He looks like he's a lot older.
31.
30 or 31, yeah, but it looks like he's 41. Yeah, dude has potential, man. He's strong. He's powerful. I think he has great grappling as well. So he's definitely a problem in this division.
Yeah. And so I'm going to tip my cap to Sean O'Malley. I have to. Just doubting him last week. Put on a good performance. He was pretty much out grappling for 5 weeks. All credit to him, man. Chase his dreams, won that fight. Also walkout, by the way. I thought the walkout in Boston. Good song choice. Just a way to cap the night off. I think that's it for us, guys. Any closing thoughts, Alex?
I want to wrap us, actually. And before I do, upcoming, so this week on our next episode, we're going to be a little more analysis heavy. We're reaching out to the Holloway versus Korean Zombie fight, which is taking place in the Singapore Stadium. God knows what time of the morning you'd have to stay up to watch that live. But here's the deal. We're going to be breaking down that fight, more stuff off of that card. We really hope you guys enjoyed watching this podcast as much as we enjoyed making it. We will see you very soon.
Peace out. Appreciate
you guys.
Cool.